2 phones? Oh, sweetheart, Daddy isn't a businessman. He's a busy cheater, and guess what? The second phone never stays silent for long. Before we open this messy little diary, don't just sit there. Hit that subscribe button. You'll want front row seats when fate slams the gavel on stories like this. Now, let's dig in.
The golden sun poured across my kitchen table as I cut pancakes into neat squares for my daughter. Cartoon laughter bubbled from the living room, syrup perfumed the air, and for a blissful second, I believed my life was as warm and steady as the morning light. "Mommy," Ella said, looking up with those big brown eyes that always undo me, "why does Daddy have 2 phones? He only lets Miss Lila play with the other one." My knife screeched against the plate. I didn't breathe. 2 phones. Miss Lila. I made my voice soft, careful. "What did you say, sweetheart?" She swung her legs under the chair, pleased with her own story. "Daddy has his work phone, the one he hides. But there's another one. He only lets Miss Lila play with it. She's funny. She says she's good at games." The room tilted. I smiled, like my face still obeyed me. "Oh, I see. And where did you see Daddy with Miss Lila?" "In the car when we got ice cream. He said it was a surprise and not to tell you." My fork fell and clattered. Surprise, right. I reached for her sticky hand and kissed her knuckles. "Thank you for telling me, baby. You're safe. Mommy's got you." Inside, 1,000 shards of glass slid into place. 2 phones, a woman's name, a secret that asked a 5-year-old to lie. By afternoon, the front door creaked open and brought a breeze of hotel soap and cologne with it. Daniel kissed Ella's head and flashed me his practiced grin. "Rough night?" I asked, rinsing plates I'd already cleaned. "Client dinner ran late. Crashed at the hotel." He wore the lie like a favorite suit, tailored, easy, expensive. Ella beamed up at him. "Daddy, did you bring Miss Lila?" He froze, just for a breath. Then he laughed. "You must be mixed up, pumpkin. Daddy doesn't know any Miss Lila." I watched the panic flicker behind his eyes like a pilot light. I tucked that spark away. That night, while the shower thundered behind the bathroom door, I lay in our bed and stared at the ceiling. The ache behind my ribs pulsed with every drip of water. The signs lined up like a trail of breadcrumbs I had refused to see. Late client meetings, phone face down, dinners gone cold. I turned my head. His phone glowed on the nightstand, the familiar one, with Ella's grin as his wallpaper. My hand hovered above it. For 10 years, I'd never needed to look. I tapped the screen. A locked passcode blinked back. Not the simple pattern I knew. A new code. Newly installed. My throat burned. He'd changed it. A fresh passcode? That's not security. That's a confession. I rolled onto my side and tucked the blanket under my chin to quiet the shaking that had started in my hands. I didn't cry. I counted breaths. 1, 2, 3. Tomorrow I would still be a mother. Tomorrow I would still be a teacher. Tomorrow I would stop pretending that the itch in my gut was paranoia. Tomorrow I would be a woman who listens to the child who loves her enough to tell the truth. Monday smelled like coffee and crayons. Ella's backpack shed colored pencils across the entryway while I buttered toast with one hand and pinned my hair with the other. I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror. Tired eyes, smile stretched thin. A woman who could pass for fine if you didn't look too close. We've been married 10 years, Daniel and I. We met when I still believed in forever like it was a job you could apply for and keep with effort and kindness. He was charming in the way men with a gift for persuasion often are. I became an elementary school teacher because I like small humans and finished tasks and being the kind of stable that helps little lives grow straight. He promised I'd never need to worry. For a while I didn't. Then small things started to fray. A dinner skipped for a client emergency. A recital missed because traffic was insane. A weekend trip that turned one night longer with a text, "Don't wait up." I waited up anyway. I told myself he was building for us, for Ella. Men in finance work brutal hours. It's not romantic, but it's practical. Practical is what keeps lights on and lunches packed. Except practical doesn't require a new passcode. Practical doesn't ask a 5-year-old to keep secrets about a woman named Lila. That afternoon, I folded Daniel's navy suit jacket and heard the crinkle of paper. A receipt slid into my palm. A jewelry store I knew by reputation and price tag. Platinum necklace with sapphire pendant. Not my taste, not my size, not for me. I tucked the slip back where I found it like I hadn't just pried up a floorboard and peeked at the rot underneath. Confrontation without proof only feeds a liar. My mother taught me that. At dinner, he was all good husband theater. Wine poured, questions about Ella's day, that lazy smile he uses like a charm. I watched him like I was taking notes for a test I didn't sign up for. Long day? I asked. Productive, he said, chewing steak. Closing with a big client. Office or out? He didn't blink. Office. I nodded and swallowed a dry bite of potato. The jewelry receipt pressed against my palm through my pocket, hot as a coal. When the house softened into night and Ella's breathing steadied behind her bedroom door, I slipped out to the garage. I slid into the driver's seat of Daniel's meticulously kept car and reached for the glove box. Locked. I tugged again. It didn't budge. A locked glove box. A jewelry receipt. A new passcode. The equation solved itself so clearly it almost felt kind. I went back inside with my heartbeat in my throat. He looked up from his phone when I entered our bedroom, the glow lighting his face like a campfire around a ghost story. He flipped the phone over when he saw me. Reflex. I climbed into bed. You changed your passcode. He didn't look at me. Company policy. Security updates. Company policy my foot. I turned out the light and counted my breaths again. 1, 2, 3. I pictured a tiny brass key tucked somewhere on his crowded key ring. I pictured the glove box opening with a small, obedient click. I pictured the other phone sleeping in the dark, its screen full of the life he was living where I didn't exist.
Lock what you want, Daniel. You can't deadbolt the truth.
Next morning after drop-off, I parked in the driveway and sat in the quiet car until the ticking engine cooled. If I opened the glove box in daylight, I'd find nothing but my own panic. I needed the key. I needed a plan. I needed to stop shaking. That evening, Daniel tossed his keys onto the kitchen counter with a clatter. House, car, office fob, gym, plus a small brass key I didn't recognize. I stared too long. He grabbed the ring and headed upstairs to shower, whistling. 2 days later, another clue. A valet ticket fell out of his pants pocket while I folded laundry. Downtown hotel. Time stamped for a night he'd annotated late meeting on our shared calendar. I sat on the edge of our bed with the slip between my fingers and imagined the choreography. Drive in, hand the keys, lie to your wife, take the elevator up. Love is a polite word. Betrayal is the truer one. At dinner, I tested him, casual as tea. How was your meeting Tuesday? Productive, he said again, because men who lie learn the same words and wear them thin. Office? Yeah. I smiled and set a piece of broccoli on Ella's plate like my stomach wasn't burning. The valet ticket pressed into my palm. That night, I lay awake beside his steady breathing, staring at the newly locked phone on his nightstand, my daughter's face replaced on his home screen by a wall I couldn't get through. I reached for my own phone instead and typed with slow, careful thumbs, how to access phone records from a shared family plan. The steps were simple. I felt ridiculous for not having done it sooner. The account was in both our names. He'd counted on my trust being lazier than his habits. The next morning, I logged in with trembling fingers. The dashboard opened like a stage curtain, and there he was, a number I didn't recognize, lit up across the month like a constellation. Late nights, early mornings, weekends when he'd run errands, clustered calls that lasted 10, 20, 40 minutes. I copied the number down and just stared at the ink. I wanted to dial it and hear her voice. I wanted to ask what games she was so good at. Instead, I set the pen down and reminded myself, proof, not performance. Patience is armor. Fury is gasoline. A week later, the lock on the glove box was still a lock. I practiced patience and felt it chew at me. He came home late again, jacket slung careless. When the shower started, I checked his pockets. No receipt, just the small weight of a velvet box. My fingers knew before my mind did. I opened it. A sapphire pendant glowed up at me, cold and blue as a bruise, delicate, expensive. Not my taste, not my neck. My mouth watered like I might be sick. I snapped the box closed and slid it into the drawer where I keep batteries and warranties and other proof of how things work. He walked in shirtless, damp, beautiful, in the way a painting of a liar would be beautiful. "Big client gift," he said when he saw my face and misread it for awe. "Wow," I managed, because I am polite even when I am breaking. He kissed my forehead and climbed into bed. I stood at the dresser, the velvet box heavy in my palm, and practiced breathing again. In, outside, in, outside. I put the box back in his jacket pocket where I found it. I turned out the light and lay down facing the wall.
A cheater's favorite trick? Gift the mistress and gaslight the wife. But look who's reading the ledger now.
I didn't sleep. I planned. I would borrow the brass key. I would open the glove box. I would find the other phone. I would take photos. I would line up timestamps from the hotel, from the cell records, from the sweet way our daughter said a stranger's name at breakfast. In the morning, I made eggs and kissed Ella's forehead and slid the small brass key off the ring when he wasn't looking. It disappeared into the tiny pocket of my jeans, the one denim designers still pretend is useful. For once, it was. When he left, I went to the garage, hand shaking so hard I needed both to guide the key. It slid into the lock like a secret that had been waiting for me. I turned it. Click. I opened the glove box. There it was. Slim, black, asleep. The other phone. The life he lived where I was a footnote. I pressed the side button and the screen brightened. No passcode, no wallpaper, just a carousel of text previews stacked like a greedy tower. "Lila, miss me? Lila, your girl is sick today, so you're all mine tomorrow. Lila, bring the necklace." My throat closed. I snapped 3 photos with my own phone, hands steady now that the shaking had somewhere to go. I put everything back exactly as it was and locked the box with the same small, obedient click. When I stepped back into the house, the kettle screamed on the stove. I turned off the burner and let the kitchen fill with the steam of things boiling over. Tomorrow I would follow him, not because I needed more proof, because I wanted to look my fear in the face and memorize it. Fear is a liar's favorite weapon. It was time I stopped letting it talk.
Bring the necklace? Oh, Daniel, honey, bring a lawyer.
The morning I decided to follow him, the world looked perfectly ordinary. Ella sang to herself while brushing her teeth, the neighbor's dog barked at squirrels, and Daniel left the house in his tailored suit, tie knotted too neatly for client coffee. I kissed his cheek like I always did. He smelled faintly of aftershave and secrets. "Big day?" I asked. He grinned, all teeth. "Yeah, client lunch, should be quick." Quick, right. I waved from the doorway, heart pounding. As soon as his car pulled off, I dropped Ella at school, then doubled back. My car idled 3 houses down until he reappeared, briefcase in one hand, phone pressed to his ear, smile meant for someone else. He drove toward downtown. I followed 2 cars behind, palms slick against the steering wheel. We stopped at a corner cafe. Daniel parked out front, stepped inside, and moments later she appeared. Miss Lila. She couldn't have been more than 24. Brunette waves, sundress that clung like it was designed for temptation, a laugh too bright for a Tuesday morning. She touched his arm like she'd been given permission, and he leaned down to kiss her cheek. My stomach churned. There it was. The story Ella told me. Alive, giggling, flesh and bone. They sat together at a window booth, his hand brushing hers across the table. My chest constricted so hard I could barely breathe. I whispered to myself, "There she is." I should have stormed in. I should have slapped the table between them and demanded answers. But instead, I sat frozen in my car, nails digging crescents into my palms. they laughed together. He leaned close, whispering something that made her blush. I had seen that look before, on our honeymoon, on the nights when he used to reach for me in the dark. Now it was hers. My vision blurred. I blinked hard, fighting tears. Not here, not in this car with strangers walking past, oblivious to the storm in my chest. I pulled out my phone and snapped photo after photo. Evidence, proof, my insurance against his polished lies. He came home at 7:15, smelling of cologne and faintly of vanilla, the same vanilla from the cafe's pastry display. "Good day?" I asked, voice steady as I chopped vegetables. "Productive, closed with a client." He kissed my temple as if he hadn't just spent hours with another woman. I smiled. "That's wonderful." Inside, my rage coiled tight. I wanted to throw the knife across the room. Instead, I stirred the pot. Patience, proof, timing. At dinner, Ella piped up between bites of macaroni. "Daddy, when can Miss Lila come over to play?" The fork slipped from his hand, clattering against his plate. His face drained, then reddened. "Who?" he barked. Ella blinked. "Miss Lila. You said she was nice. You let her play with your phone." The silence was a scream. I folded my napkin carefully. "Is there something you'd like to tell us, Daniel?" He shot me a look, pleading, warning, desperate, all in a flash. Then he forced a laugh. "Pumpkin, you must be imagining things. There's no Miss Lila." I tilted my head, smiled like I believed him. "Of course not." But I saw the tremor in his hand as he lifted his glass. He knew the walls were closing in. That night, after he fell asleep, I crept into the garage. The little brass key turned easily. The other phone blinked awake in my hand, its screen a confession booth. Messages piled up like a neon billboard. "Lila, can't wait to see you again. Lila, Ella is so cute. I can't believe you said she thought I was your friend. Lila, don't worry, she won't tell. Kids never do." I gasped so sharply I had to cover my mouth with my hand. He had dragged Ella into it, used her innocence as camouflage. That was the moment the love I had for him cracked into something colder. Not anger, not yet. Strategy. Tomorrow, I told myself. Tomorrow, I'll stop pretending.
Oh, Daniel, rookie mistake. When your mistress knows your kid's name, you've already lost. Camille doesn't just have suspicion anymore, she has ammunition.
When you live with a liar long enough, you learn their rhythm, the pauses, the nervous habits, the way their excuses sound rehearsed. Daniel thought he still had me fooled, but by the time I found those messages from Lila mentioning my daughter's name, I wasn't just angry anymore. I was finished. Finished doubting, finished waiting, finished letting him choreograph a life where I was the backup dancer. The only thing left was the confrontation, and it had to be on my terms. The next morning, I put my plan in motion. Coffee brewed, pancakes flipped. I kissed him goodbye as though nothing had changed. He left for his so-called client lunch, and I smiled sweetly from the doorway, while inside my chest thundered like a war drum. When the door closed, I pulled out my phone and called Marissa. My sister didn't need convincing. "Camille, you can't go in blind. Gather your evidence, protect yourself and Ella, then corner him where he can't wriggle out." By the afternoon, we were sitting at my kitchen table, sifting through the growing mountain of receipts, phone records, screenshots, and photos. The manila folder in front of me wasn't just paper, it was the truth, stripped bare. Marissa slid it toward me. "This isn't suspicion anymore, sis. This is a case file. He's done." I nodded, throat tight. "Then tonight, he gets served." That evening, I roasted a chicken, mashed garlic potatoes, even toasted almonds for the green beans. The kitchen smelled like the home he thought he still had. When he walked in and saw the table set, he looked almost touched. "What's the occasion?" "Just thought we should have a nice dinner," I said. He smiled, relieved, like he'd gotten away with something. We ate together. He joked with Ella, asked her about preschool, sipped his wine like nothing in the world was wrong. I let him believe it. until Ella opened her mouth and brought the whole house of cards down. "Daddy," she said brightly, swinging her legs, "when can Miss Lila come over to play?" Daniel's fork slipped from his hand, clattering onto his plate, his face drained white, then flushed a furious red. "What?" he snapped. Ella tilted her head, confused. "Miss Lila, she's nice. You let her play with your phone." I reached across the table and touched her little hand before Daniel could spit another denial. My voice was calm, almost soothing. "That's enough for now, sweetheart. Why don't you go watch cartoons before bed? Mommy and Daddy need to talk about boring grown-up things." "Okay." She slid off her chair, skipping toward the living room. A moment later, the theme song of her favorite show filled the air, cheerful, muffled, a safe wall between her innocence and the ugliness at our table. I turned back to Daniel, my smile sharpening like a blade. "So, about Miss Lila." He tried to laugh, but it cracked halfway. "Camille, don't tell me you're taking a 5-year-old story seriously." "Oh, I take it very seriously." I stood, walked to the sideboard, and pulled out the manila folder. I slid it across the table and leaned back. "Go ahead, flip through. Remind yourself how sloppy you've been." His hands trembled as he opened it. Photos, receipts, call logs, screenshots. The look on his face when he reached the texts mentioning Ella was something I'll never forget. A mix of panic, guilt, and naked fear. "This isn't..." He shook his head, fumbling. "This isn't what it looks like." I laughed, sharp and humorless. "It looks like an affair. It looks like you lying to my face. It looks like our daughter knew before I did." He slammed the folder shut, his voice rising. "This is none of Ella's business." "Exactly," I snapped. "But you made it hers. You let her see things no child should have to process. You dragged her into your lies." His eyes narrowed, anger flashing, but I didn't flinch. I had the evidence. I had the truth. For once, he had nothing.
Classic cheater script: deny, deflect, and when cornered, blame the kid. Daniel, darling, the only thing uglier than your lies is how bad you are at them.
Daniel pushed back from the table so hard his chair scraped the floor. His face was crimson, his voice trembling with fury. "We'll talk about this later." I stood too, planting my hands flat on the table between us. My voice was steel. "Number. We'll talk about it now, because I am done being lied to, done being treated like I don't see the truth staring me in the face." He glared, chest heaving, and for the first time I saw it. The crack in his mask. The polished, confident man who could talk his way out of anything was gone. In his place was someone cornered, desperate. Without another word, he stormed toward the front door. It slammed behind him with a force that rattled the walls. I sank back into my chair, my chest heaving, tears stinging but refusing to fall. Ella's laughter floated in from the living room, her world still bright and untouched. And for the first time in years, I felt power settle into my bones. He didn't know it yet, but the game was over. When the door slammed behind him, I thought maybe he'd drive off and stew in his lies until morning. But 15 minutes later, I heard the familiar grind of the garage door. His footsteps stormed through the house like thunder. I stayed at the kitchen table, folder open in front of me, a glass of water steady in my hand. My heart was racing, but my face was calm. He barreled in, eyes wild. "What the hell do you think you're doing? Going through my things, spying on me? That's a violation." I sipped my water. "A violation?" My voice was cool, razor thin. "You're worried about privacy when you've been running around town with your mistress?" His jaw clenched. "You're blowing this out of proportion. Lila is..." He stopped short, realizing he'd just said her name. Gotcha. I leaned forward, pinning him with my gaze. "Say it again. Say her name. Because my daughter already did." He ran a hand through his hair, pacing. "It's not what you think." I slammed my palm down on the folder. "It's exactly what I think. Hotel tickets, jewelry receipts, phone logs that light up at 2 in the morning, and messages on your second phone, Daniel. Do you want me to read them aloud?" His face went pale. You You had no right to touch that phone. Funny, I shot back. You had no right to buy another one. He slammed his fist against the wall, voice cracking. I've been under stress. Work's been insane. You don't understand. Stress doesn't buy necklaces for strangers, I snapped. He froze, the fight draining out of him. His shoulders slumped, eyes suddenly watery. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. She was just supposed to be an escape. I didn't mean for Ella to… My blood went cold. An escape? I rose to my feet, shaking with fury. You dragged our daughter into your little escape. Do you know what she asked me? Why Daddy had 2 phones? Why Miss Lila played with the other one? She knows, Daniel. She already knows. His lip trembled, but I didn't soften. I grabbed the folder and held it up between us. This is enough to destroy you, your job, your reputation, custody of Ella. If you thought you could juggle 2 lives, you should have realized sooner. Both of them end here. He staggered back like I'd slapped him. Camille, please, don't do this. I'll end it. I'll cut her off. I'll block her number. I raised my hand. Stop. Do you hear yourself? You're bargaining like a criminal caught mid-theft. You're not sorry, Daniel. You're sorry you got caught. He dropped into a chair, burying his face in his hands. I don't want to lose you. I laughed, bitter and raw. You already did. His voice rose again, desperate, pleading. Camille, think about Ella. She needs her father. I stepped closer, leaning in until I could see the sweat beating at his temples. No. She needs a father who doesn't lie to her face, who doesn't use her as a cover story, who doesn't bring strange women into her life and tell her to keep secrets from her mother. His breath hitched. I straightened, my voice cold as ice. So, here's how this goes. You move out tonight. You go find a hotel, or Lila, or whatever hole you want to crawl into, and then you get a lawyer because you and we're not husband and wife anymore. We're adversaries. The words landed like gunshots in the room. Daniel's eyes widened, panic turning into something sharp, something dangerous. You can't just… Oh, I can. My voice sliced through him. And I will. The house was quiet except for the muffled cartoons in the other room. For a moment we just stood there, me, unshaken, and him, unraveling. Finally, he grabbed his jacket, muttering curses under his breath, and stormed out. The slam of the front door rattled the windows. I stood in the silence that followed, my chest heaving, my hands trembling. But underneath the adrenaline was something steadier. Power. For the first time in years, I wasn't the one left in the dark. I walked into the living room, scooped Ella into my arms, and kissed her forehead. She snuggled against me, warm and innocent, unaware of the war her little words had sparked. I whispered into her hair, "It's just us now, baby, and we're going to be okay."
Dinner's over, Daniel. And so is your double life. Camille just flipped the script. And trust me, darling, the credits are coming fast.
When the door slammed behind him, I thought maybe he'd drive off and stew in his lies until morning. But 15 minutes later, I heard the familiar grind of the garage door. His footsteps stormed through the house like thunder. I stayed at the kitchen table, folder open in front of me, a glass of water steady in my hand. My heart was racing, but my face was calm. He barreled in, eyes wild. "What the hell do you think you're doing? Going through my things, spying on me? That's a violation." I sipped my water. "A violation?" My voice was cool, razor thin. "You're worried about privacy when you've been running around town with your mistress?" His jaw clenched. "You're blowing this out of proportion. Lila is…" He stopped short, realizing he'd just said her name. Gotcha. I leaned forward, pinning him with my gaze. "Say it again. Say her name. Because my daughter already did." He ran a hand through his hair, pacing. "It's not what you think." I slammed my palm down on the folder. "It's exactly what I think. Hotel tickets, jewelry receipts, phone logs that light up at 2 in the morning, and messages on your second phone, Daniel. Do you want me to read them aloud?" His face went pale. You had no right to touch that phone." Funny, I shot back. You had no right to buy another one. He slammed his fist against the wall, voice cracking. I've been under stress. Work's been insane. You don't understand. Stress doesn't buy necklaces for strangers, I snapped. He froze, the fight draining out of him. His shoulders slumped, eyes suddenly watery. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Lila was. She was just supposed to be an escape. I didn't mean for Ella to... My blood went cold. An escape? I rose to my feet, shaking with fury. You dragged our daughter into your little escape. Do you know what she asked me? Why Daddy had 2 phones? Why Miss Lila played with the other one? She knows, Daniel. She already knows. His lip trembled, but I didn't soften. I grabbed the folder and held it up between us. This is enough to destroy you, your job, your reputation, custody of Ella. If you thought you could juggle 2 lives, you should have realized sooner. Both of them end here. He staggered back like I'd slapped him. Camille, please, don't do this. I'll end it. I'll cut her off. I'll block her number. I raised my hand. Stop. Do you hear yourself? You're bargaining like a criminal caught mid-theft. You're not sorry, Daniel. You're sorry you got caught. He dropped into a chair, burying his face in his hands. I don't want to lose you. I laughed, bitter and raw. You already did. His voice rose again, desperate, pleading. Camille, think about Ella. She needs her father. I stepped closer, leaning in until I could see the sweat beating at his temples. No. She needs a father who doesn't lie to her face, who doesn't use her as a cover story, who doesn't bring strange women into her life and tell her to keep secrets from her mother. His breath hitched. I straightened, my voice cold as ice. So, here's how this goes. You move out tonight. You go find a hotel, or Lila, or whatever hole you want to crawl into, and then you get a lawyer because you and we're not husband and wife anymore. We're adversaries. The words landed like gunshots in the room. Daniel's eyes widened, panic turning into something sharp, something dangerous. You can't just... Oh, I can. My voice sliced through him. And I will. The house was quiet except for the muffled cartoons in the other room. For a moment we just stood there, me, unshaken, and him, unraveling. Finally, he grabbed his jacket, muttering curses under his breath, and stormed out. The slam of the front door rattled the windows. I stood in the silence that followed, my chest heaving, my hands trembling. But underneath the adrenaline was something steadier. Power. For the first time in years, I wasn't the one left in the dark. I walked into the living room, scooped Ella into my arms, and kissed her forehead. She snuggled against me, warm and innocent, unaware of the war her little words had sparked. I whispered into her hair, "It's just us now, baby, and we're going to be okay."
And there it is, the explosion. Daniel stormed out, but not before Camille burned the house of lies to the ground. Don't go anywhere, because the fallout is where the real fun begins.
The house felt unnaturally quiet after Daniel left. I tucked Ella into bed, kissed her forehead, and whispered the same promise I'd been whispering to myself all evening. We're going to be okay. But when I finally collapsed into my own bed, sleep didn't come. I kept replaying his face, the lies, the panic, the anger, the desperate bargaining. I should have felt relief that it was over, but instead, all I felt was the hum of unfinished business. Because affairs don't just vanish when the front door slams. They linger, they claw, they demand more truth than you ever wanted. The next morning, while Ella was watching cartoons, my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. Unknown number. We need to talk. Please don't hang up. My name is Lila. My heart stuttered. Lila. For a long moment I just stared at the screen, every instinct screaming to block her, delete the message, pretend she didn't exist. But I couldn't. Not after everything. I typed back with shaking fingers. What do you want? The reply came fast. To explain, please. I didn't know about you.
Ah, the Mistress Outreach Program. Translation: Don't hate me. I thought I was special. Lila, Darling, if he lies to his wife, what makes you think you're getting the truth?
My hands trembled as I hit call. It rang once, twice, then clicked. A soft, nervous voice answered. Camille? Yes. My voice was flat, controlled. I'm so sorry, she rushed. I didn't know. He told me you were separated. He said you were unstable, that you'd moved out but refused to sign papers. I swear I thought... Stop. I cut her off, my pulse roaring in my ears. Don't tell me what you thought. Tell me what you knew. There was silence on the line, broken only by her shaky breath. I knew he had 2 phones. I knew he smiled at your daughter in the car when he thought I wasn't looking. I knew he was lying about something, but I wanted to believe him anyway. Because Her voice cracked. Because I loved him. The words sliced me open, my hand clenched around the phone. Loved him enough, I asked bitterly, to let my 5-year-old play cover-up for your little romance? She choked on a sob. Number, I never wanted that. Camille, you have to believe me. I didn't know he was still living with you. I thought... Her voice trailed, breaking. Then she whispered the words that changed everything. I'm pregnant. The air vanished from the room. My vision blurred, black edging into the corners. Pregnant. The word rang in my head like a church bell, deafening, merciless. You're lying, I whispered. I'm not, she said quietly. I found out 2 weeks ago. He promised me he'd leave you. He said he just needed time to untangle the finances. Untangle the finances, of course. My hands shook with fury. He wasn't planning a future with her. He was planning his exit strategy from me, and all the while, he had the audacity to sit at our table, kiss our daughter goodnight, and pretend our family still existed.
Well, a baby on the way. Daniel's not just playing house, he's building a whole second family on quicksand. Congratulations, darling, your husband's fertility rate is higher than his IQ.
I wanted to throw the phone across the room. I wanted to scream until the walls cracked, but instead I sat there, my hands numb, listening to the sound of her sniffling on the other end. Why are you telling me this? I finally asked. My voice was hollow. Because you deserve the truth, she whispered, and because I don't want to be you. I don't want to wake up 10 years from now and realize I wasted my life on a man who never loved me. Her words twisted like a knife. She was right. He hadn't loved either of us. He had loved the game, the lies, the thrill of control. I ended the call without another word. I sat in the silence of my kitchen, the manila folder still spread across the table. The evidence was heavy enough, but now there was this, a child who would tether him to Lila forever. My pulse steadied, my tears dried, and something harder replaced the ache. Resolve. This wasn't just betrayal anymore. This was war, and if Daniel thought he was going to waltz away from me unscathed, he had no idea who he was married to.
Pregnant. Oh, Daniel, you really outdid yourself. One home wrecked, another on the way, and a wife who just leveled up from betrayed to battle-ready. Grab your popcorn, darlings. The finale is coming.
After Lila's confession, I spent the rest of that night staring at the ceiling. Sleep was impossible. The word pregnant echoed in my head until it hollowed me out. I wasn't just competing with another woman. There was going to be another child, another family, another lie binding Daniel to a life outside of mine. But when the sun rose, I realized something. I had cried enough. My tears hadn't stopped him. My hope hadn't saved us. If I wanted peace, I had to build it myself. So I got up, made coffee, and called a lawyer. Her name was Rachel, sharp-voiced and efficient. I didn't tell her the whole saga at once, just the essentials: affair, second phone, evidence folder, and now a pregnant mistress. Rachel's silence was short and lethal. Then she said, "You need to protect yourself financially, starting today. We'll talk custody, assets, and a postnuptial agreement if you're not ready to file for divorce yet. But you can't sit on this." "I'm not sitting," I said firmly. "I'm standing. For Ella." She scheduled an appointment for the next afternoon. For the first time since Ella's innocent question at breakfast, I felt steady. That afternoon, I watched Daniel play with Ella in the backyard. He swung her around, her laughter ringing out like nothing had changed, and for her, nothing had. She didn't know the ground beneath her family had cracked wide open. My throat tightened, but I stayed at the kitchen window. This wasn't the time to shatter her world. Not yet. But I made myself a silent vow. Whatever happened, Ella would never wonder where she stood with me. She would never be asked to lie, never be caught between two lives. She would be safe, even if it meant tearing everything else down. That evening, Daniel walked in late, smelling of cologne and guilt. I didn't wait for excuses this time. "We need to talk," I said. He groaned. "Camille, not tonight. Sit down." My voice was steel. He sat. I slid a new stack of papers across the table, fresh from Rachel's office. "These are terms. You're going to sign them. Post-nuptial agreement, custody arrangements, financial protections for me and Ella." His eyes bulged. "Are you insane? I'm not signing this." "You are," I said calmly, "because if you don't, I'll file for divorce tomorrow. And when that happens, every photo, every message, every receipt goes public. Your job? Gone. Your reputation? Gone. And guess who gets full custody of Ella? Not the man who paraded his mistress around in front of her." His jaw clenched, rage rising. "You wouldn't." I leaned forward, eyes blazing. "I already have a lawyer. Try me." Daniel's face twisted between fury and fear. "Camille, please, don't do this. We can fix it. I'll end things with Lila. I'll block her. You already promised that last night," I interrupted. "And you were lying even then." His lips pressed into a thin line. "You don't understand. She's pregnant." I let the silence stretch. I wanted him to see that I already knew, that his last weapon had been taken from him before he even pulled it. His voice faltered. "You knew?" "Yes." My voice was flat. "And it changes nothing." He dropped his head into his hands, shoulders shaking. For a moment, I thought he might cry. But I didn't feel pity. I felt power. Finally, he looked up, eyes hollow. "What do you want from me?" I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms. "I want you to sign those papers. I want you to understand that your choices have consequences. And I want you to realize that you don't get to burn down my life and walk away unscathed." He stared at me, silent, broken. I stood, collecting the papers and sliding them back into their folder. "You have until Friday. If I don't have your signature by then, the divorce is filed Monday morning." His mouth opened to argue, but I was already walking away. For the first time in years, I felt taller, stronger, untouchable, because Daniel wasn't in control anymore. I was.
And that, my dears, is how you flip the script. Daniel thought he was running 2 lives, but Camille just handed him a pen and told him which one ends now. Spoiler alert, it's his.
The deadline came and went. Friday evening, Daniel slid the signed papers across the table without a word. His hands shook, his face hollow. I didn't gloat. I didn't thank him. I simply picked up the folder and tucked it into my bag. It was done. Not the healing, not the rebuilding, but the first step in a future that belonged to me and Ella alone. The weeks that followed were quieter than I expected. I picked Ella up from preschool, made dinners without waiting for Daniel to come home, and filled our nights with puzzles, bedtime stories, and laughter. We created our own rhythm, just the 2 of us. She didn't ask about Miss Lila anymore. She didn't even ask much about Daddy. Children are resilient that way. When you show them where safety lives, they stop looking for it anywhere else. And for the first time in years, I stopped looking over my shoulder. Daniel still saw Ella on weekends. He looked older every time. The charm dulled, the grin stiff. His suit jacket sagged on his shoulders like they were borrowed. Once, he dropped Ella off and I noticed his tie was wrinkled, his car cluttered with takeout bags. I didn't ask questions. I didn't care. I knew he was still with Lila. I also knew she wasn't glowing like a fairy tale ending. Pregnancy isn't as glamorous when the man you thought would leave his wife shows up half broken, stripped of his arrogance. That was their story to live. It wasn't mine anymore. One night, after Ella was asleep, I sat by the window with a glass of wine and let myself breathe. I thought about the woman I was a few months ago, the one who ignored her gut, who let her husband's excuses smooth over every sharp edge of doubt. That woman was gone. In her place stood someone sharper, steadier. Someone who knew her worth wasn't tied to a ring or a man who couldn't stay faithful. I whispered into the quiet, "Thank you, Ella," because without her innocent words, I might still be blind. Months later, the paperwork was finalized. The postnup ensured Ella's security, my finances were shielded, and Daniel's freedom came with chains he forged himself. People whispered, as people do. Some said I was cold, ruthless. Others called me brave. I didn't care what anyone called me. I only cared about the little girl in the next room, sleeping peacefully because her mother finally chose truth over illusion. I cared about the quiet strength I felt every morning when I woke up without dread in my chest. I cared about the life I was rebuilding, brick by brick, lie by lie, dismantled. One evening, as I tucked Ella into bed, she looked at me with those same wide brown eyes that had blown my world apart. "Mommy," she whispered, "are you happy now?" My throat tightened. I brushed her hair back and kissed her forehead. "Yes, baby, I'm happy now." And for the first time, I realized it was true.
Happy endings aren't about the prince, darlings. They're about the queen who rebuilds her castle after the fraud gets banished. Camille didn't just survive, she claimed her crown. And Daniel, well, let's just say karma makes a fine roommate. And that, my dears, is how one little question toppled a whole double life. Share this video, binge another tale, and remember, fate always collects. This has been Flame and Fate Chronicles.